Hello and welcome along to Mondo Chelloveck Movies. My name is John, and this video is going to be me talking about my 50-year journey through horror movies. Now, you might say to yourself, 50 years, when did you start? So last month I turned 56, and I always have this recollection that I started watching horror movies at 6. Now, the reason why I thought this is because of this movie. Now, you might wonder yourself, this is a strange place to start in your journey into horror. Well, what happened was, I told this story before, but I'll tell you it again. When this movie came out in 1973, so actually this will be my 51 years of horror because I went to see this at the cinema in 1973. I know that because we lived in Byker at the time until 1974, and in 1973 we went to the Byker cinema called the Apollo, and it's changed, as you can see from the pictures. It'll change quite a bit. It's changed from the cinema. It changed into a garage, and then it changed into Morrison's. So anyway, me and my dad were walking. My dad said, "You want to go at the pictures?" And we went on an evening, and I would have been 5 at the time, so you can scratch the 6. But so I went to this picture, and my dad says, "Right, there you go." And he paid me ticket, and he said, "I'll see you later." I said, "Where you going?" He says, "I'm just going to see a man about a dog." And I was left in the cinema to watch this. Now, to be honest, I knew about James Bond. It wasn't that I was unaware of him, but the fact of this movie on the big screen with the voodoo element to it, it scared the life out of me. So I was crying my eyes out, and these two old dears took me under their wing, and they gave me dad what for when when I came out the cinema. And that, how do you think that went? But anyway, so this was my first introduction into what I consider to be horror. It could have frightened the life out of me. So it's a strange place to start, but I thought I would mention that because literally you can say from 5 years old, I've always been kind of atoned with horror. So getting back into more age appropriate viewing, of course, in 1974, I started watching Doctor Who in earnest. And again, as I would imagine most kids in the 1970s growing up, they would see this and they would be petrified. I was really scared about this one. Now, on a side note to this one, in 1974, my dad took us to see the Doctor Who exhibition in Blackpool, and it was amazing. And you entered through a TARDIS, and it was just one of those things where I thought, I can't believe I'm going to see something to do with Doctor Who, Daleks, all that type of thing. So it went in, you know where this story's going to go. We went in, my dad says, "I'm just going to see a man about a dog," and I went, "Sorry." So I was into this exhibition. As you see from some of the photographs, the exhibition absolutely petrified us. I think it would have scared us anyway because it was a really creepy, like, sort of setup. But of course, when I came out there, it was a total mess. And I think probably, I can't remember, I'd imagine someone took us under the wing and they got us out and they gave me dad wrong again. So thinking about it, I'll have to say a big thank you to the man in the pub for getting me started on my horror journey, whoever he was. So even though you can't say this is totally horror, at 6 years old, this felt like a real horror show. And it used to petrify, especially the sea devils. When the sea devils came on with that kind of face and that headlamp in the hand, it was just honestly, I was behind the city. And I imagine most kids in the early 70s felt the same way. So moving on from there, what I did was I got into the world as most kids did. This is before getting into my movie sort of watching things. I used to get into horror comics. Dracula Lives was one that I bought from the word go, 8 pence. Can you believe it? This was amazing. And it used to feature in it. It used to feature Werewolf by Night. And Werewolf by Night was one of my favourite comic strips. I collected them magazines, or comics, should I say. And also, my favourite one was The Monster of Frankenstein. This was the best sort of horror comics because really I had other comics like, the Hulk and Spider-Man. But for some reason, I navigated towards these. It showed from an early age that I just had this sort of very deep interest in horror. So moving on to 1975, at the tender age of 7, what do you think happened? Yes, of course. Went to see this twice at the Cannon Cinema, which is just up the road from me, or it was just up the road from me. And I went there with my mum, who was absolutely petrified. I was more intrigued about the fact that adults were literally like nearly screaming in their fright when this movie was playing. I'd never seen that before. And this started my real love for horror because I was obsessed about this movie, as I would imagine most kids of that age who were kind of, I mean, don't get us wrong, I was absolutely petrified on both times that I watched it at the cinema, at the Cannon Cinema. But this was just a revelation for me because I thought at this point that I'm going to see a kids' movie, kind of, because I was a kid, and I thought this would be just a bit of a sort of a scary movie. I didn't realize how bad this movie was going to be because when you think about it, this movie is pretty horrific. I can't believe that it was classed as A or a PG back in the day. Really, the sort of cinema certifications didn't mean anything because you just went and saw anything you wanted, kind of. And it meant that you're supposed to go on with an adult. But obviously, when you saw me going and live and let die by myself, that didn't hold any sway. So, anyway, this one was a game changer, as I would imagine it is for most people. So, this is why these three things have a special place in my life to do with horror, because I think that this is where my love for horror stems. Also in 1975 to 1983 was the start of the BBC Two horror double bills on a Saturday night, and they were stuff of legend. So don't forget when you used to go to the cinema, you were lucky to see that movie again unless you went a couple of times that week, or which I didn't do at that point, and you could see them on the TV, but they weren't on the TV for about 4 to 5 years. So really, you had one shot to see them, and you couldn't see them again. So you used to look elsewhere to get your horror fix. And I was bought books like this. This book I used to read this when you were a kid. You would read this. You had nothing else, well, nothing else to do, nothing else to have reference from. So you went through these books. And this book, I used to look at it all the time, read all about these films, but you couldn't see them. You could only just, if you were lucky, you could get them on the horror double bills. So I would scour this books and I would get like a load of movie recommendations. So what I would do is I'd wait for them to come on the TV. Now, a few of them that stood out to me was this one. Now, when I was looking at these pictures in here, this used to petrify me. And when I saw this movie and I saw this sort of scene, it was petrifying to me. So that was one that really stood out to me. And I've thought about it a few times. And as till now, I haven't seen it since those days. That's another picture that used to freak me out. You can clearly see there's a bloke behind this mask, but I just used to really, stuff of nightmares. And this picture as well really freaked me out. Those people on there were just hideous. Now, this is from a movie called The Split in 1962, and up to this point, I've never seen it. And this character is called the Monster. So I read these books before I went to bed, and obviously I was petrified. When you go to sleep and you think there's something under the bed, all that type of thing. Wow. So that was, and then obviously moving on to that, with reference books, bearing in mind you can't see anything else, on TV apart from this glorious double bill. Used to find out about these movies in this amazing book called horror movies. And I've read this from front to back. It's got tons of things about, movies, Dracula as well, tells you all about the Dracula movies. Got some, great pictures and it, you was whetting the appetite for the Saturday when it came. You would think, oh, for instance, Scars of Dracula was on. So I've read about it here. So I can't wait to see it there. So this was, I mean, at this point, this was you're probably talking the mid '70s, and I was getting into the first ones I can really remember getting into in the horror double bills was definitely the Universal Monsters one, and especially Frankenstein. Frankenstein was my go-to monster, so I used to love waiting for the next Frankenstein, and hopefully they'd show them in order. And they used to show one week or maybe a double bill of Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein, and used to wait to see what was coming next. And sometimes I feel there was movies on here that never used to get shown that much. For instance, Ghost of Frankenstein never seemed to get shown on TV, not that I can remember anyway. So that was where I used to go with that. So moving on to 1976, and this happened. This comic here, Action. It's amazing. It's so bloodthirsty. It's so un-PC. It's got everything about it that's kind of so violent. It's unbelievable. Got banned. I've done some videos on that. I'll leave them down below. I'm going to go back and I'm going to finish off my saga of the Action comics. I've just got to read some of them first. So this was a real eye opener for us because, as well as my horror books, I was reading this thing and this was getting, you're hearing about these things like Death Race 2000 was getting talked about in here. Things like Spinball, which was Rollerball, which I was dying to see. I used to see the poster of Rollerball all over the place, and I just couldn't, wait to see things like that. Although I didn't see it at the time, unfortunately, I was too young. I wouldn't have gone into that one. I would have only been about 7, so I don't think I could have said to them, "Yes, I am 18." So this is amazing. I used to wait every Monday for this, for my slice of action, and see how gory it could be, or how violent it could be. So at that point, I think I used to watch the Hammer movies. This was like mid '70s, and I remember I think I was too young to watch them, but I remember watching them with my dad, and we used to watch them in my house in Parkview, where my bedroom used to be next door. There was kind of like another bedroom, and there was a big TV in there. We used to go in there in the night time, used to watch these things, pitch black, and my dad used to fall asleep, and I used to see my dad. I used to hit him all the time and say, "Here, something bad's coming." You know, the music used to come for Dracula. I used to hit him, and he used to hold the pillow up or something for us. So that was my way of getting through them movies. And when I used to go to my grand's sometimes on a Saturday, she used to say to me, "You are not stopping up to watch these movies." So I used to say, "Fair enough." But what I used to do was, because a big house, a big, huge, spooky house. I'll show you a picture of it now. I'll show you a picture of me outside, but you'll see how it's changed in this recent photograph. And I used to sneak downstairs in the middle of the night and used to turn these movies on, maybe catch a movie. So you can imagine I didn't have my dad next door to us to sort of put the pillow over my face. So I would have to do it myself. But had one ear on the movie and one ear of my grand coming downstairs ready to give us wrong because I was sneaking down to watch a horror film. And that shows you how much horror meant to me at that early part of my life. So that went on for a couple of years, being really excited about what you're going to see, what double bill was coming up, because you get your Radio Times. The Radio Times would show you what was coming up, and you were planning all your horror movies out. I was hoping that, when there's a really good horror movie on, that wasn't going to be grand, so I'd get to watch it with my dad. So then, of course, this happened. Yes, I got into punk music, and everything else seems to go by the by. I did used to watch the horror films at the weekend, but I was more just into this punk scene. I think I got into it late, unfortunately. I think it was around about mid 78, towards the end of 78. But I was just Sex Pistols, I couldn't get enough of them. I used to collect all the stuff. I used to just look for paper cuttings. I was just obsessed about them. I couldn't think about them, anything else but thinking about punk music and the Sex Pistols and all the things that came along with it. So, vinyl was the king for me at that time. And horror went onto the background. So I carried on with that, being into punk and music and building up my collection and getting into all these weird bands. But then in around about 1980, I kind of realized that I was old enough to kind of go into the Whitley Bay Playhouse and pretend to be 18. I was 14 at the time or 13. And I thought, I'm going to get all these movies were shown outside. The posters were shown outside. And I thought, I've got to go and see that. So I was saying to me pal one time, Doc Vibes, who wrote that song, The Undead, I'm going to put in my videos. I said to him, and he was shorter than me, and I wasn't too big myself. I said, I want to go and see that movie in there, American Werewolf in London. And he said, we'll never get it in there. And I said, well, let's give it a shot. So I went in one afternoon and said to the woman at the kiosk and says, 2 for American Werewolf in London with probably high pitched voices. And she said, are you 18? And we said, yeah, of course we are. And he just says, we'll get you selling then. And it was like, you what? So we'll get into there. We had to sit through Elton John in Central Park, which was awful to me at that point, because I was into punk. And we watched American Werewolf in London, then we stopped in again because you just could, and we'd watched it all day, watched it twice. And it was like something I'd never seen. And this was like another revelation for me because when you're used to certain things and certain, watching Universal and Hammer things, which are great, but when American Werewolf hits you and you just think, this is another level, I don't know what I've just seen here. And this is what got me into sort of the more, I'm not going to say extreme horror because I don't think it was extreme at the time. That'll come later on. But I do think that the more extreme version of this horror with this whole body transformation, which is you'd never seen anything like it, led me down the path of thinking this has got to be something that I've got to investigate well as well because they let me in to see an 18 at the Whitley Bay Playhouse. So I thought, right, I'm going to go there all the time because I can get in anything I want. And I never got turned away. I didn't care what I went in to see. They would just say, get yourself in. And I used to go every Monday night, and the Monday night was a cheap night, and I used to stay all week. Well, go back every week if I like a certain movie. Things like The Thing. I watched The Thing 4 times in the week. Now, obviously, as well, what I would do is I'll do a separate video on what ones that I did see in the Whitley Bay Playhouse. I'll take you through the ones that I can remember that I actually saw on the big screen there. These are movies like The Thing when they first came out. People had never heard of The Thing. I've talked about this before. They just said, what's this? The Thing. Let's go and see it. Think it was going to be a load of rubbish. And it's one of the best things I've ever seen at the cinema. And it's funny because in them days, you couldn't really find out what was at the cinema until it was actually shown outside on the cinema. But with American Werewolf in London, I did have a heads up. I got Fangoria. I was looking in the shelves when I was buying some magazines or some comics. And I saw this Fangoria with a picture of American Werewolf on the front. I thought, I don't know what that is. So I picked it up, looked through it. The pictures in it were just absolutely amazing. It had the werewolf transformation scene. That's what made me think, as soon as that movie comes in, well, I didn't. But as soon as I saw it on the picture, I thought, I've got to go and see that movie. So that was kind of my gateway into watching at 13, to going and saying, I've got to see every horror film that I can at the cinema. And I saw some belters there, which I'll talk about in a separate video. So I've done that for around about from 1980 to 1983, because I was just there all the time, because this was a great way, a great cheap way for me just to spend my life watching movies, because this was like having the telly just down the road from me. As you remember from that video I showed you, I was literally just coming down the road, and I was just, by the time my door was shutting, I was actually sitting down in the Whitley Bay Playhouse. It was that close. So when 1983 come, well, guess what happened? VHS. And that in itself was a huge game changer. Imagine, if you will, you've got this chance to see a movie whenever you want to, rather than going to the Whitley Bay Playhouse and seeing these movies at, say, 8 o'clock at night. I could go at my mate's house and we could watch a movie any time of the day, any horror film that he had. Of course, these movies at this point, the 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 problem I had was I didn't really get into the video nasties. I wished I watched them, because everybody used to pass them around, because I didn't have a video to record at the time. So I used to go to my mate's house and we used to watch them, and he used to get, his dad used to get them. So he used to go and sneak up into his room, just get all that stuff from him. We used to watch all these banned horror films, and we got to see them. But of course, when it come to me actually buying them and keeping them, I couldn't do that, because by the time I got my video recorder in 1985, at the tender age of 18, on my 18th birthday, that's quite, how ironic is that? The video nasties had the act had come in, and you could not buy these things for loving the money. So that was a goner. So what you used to do was you start to go and look for copies, because that was the only way to own them type of movies. Yes, you could buy regular movies, and I used to buy lots. I mean, VHS was the king at the time. So because I had this player, I thought, I'm going to get a library here. So I think I got my own library of movies I want. Mainly, I think I got like sort of action and comedy. I was looking for the horror stuff, but you couldn't find it. Maybe if you were looking at a car boot sale, you could pick up the old pre-sale. So in 85, when I got my first video player, I signed up as many video libraries as I could. And of course, I went looking for all these horror films, hoping I would get some uncut ones, but usually they were cut. And you could tell they were cut, and it was quite disappointing actually. But you got some belters there. You got Return of the Living Dead, you got things like The Thing, things that weren't cut, for whatever reason. And actually, I was talking about this before, but when I was looking for all this stuff here, I actually found this list because I'd lost it, but I put it into my cupboard. And what it is I've got a list here of everything, every single video that I've got out from the video library from the whole year of 1986. So I'm going to go through that one. And you can see what I actually picked up in the year of 1986. And there's some strange movies in there, movies I can't even remember even watching. But it just shows you what I was like. I was gravitating to all this stuff. It was like a kid in a candy shop. You could just say, right, I'm having this, I'm having that. Doesn't matter what it was like. Now, this is getting back to the whole blind buying things. And you think, well, blind rental was a thing in there. To be honest, I would imagine most of those things in there, when I got them the first time, it was just basically looking at the cover and thinking, I'm having that. Didn't know what it was. Sometimes you were really, like it got a belter of film, and sometimes you thought that was the biggest load of rubbish I'd ever seen. It's like the pictures got nothing to do with what's on the actual video. You know, it's a bit like it is today. So you can see you've been blind buying for like years and years. And I would say 85 to 98 was my heyday for VHS. I had a massive collection. And sadly, to this day, I can't think I took a photograph of everything else in my life, but I never once took a photograph of my video collection, which I can't believe. Actually, I had this cupboard decked out with this thing. It was like a bit like a Criterion cupboard full of VHS. And of course, and John Hall, my good friend John Hall, who came to the scene round about 1992 when I'd started when we working together in the Findus, and we started talking about these movies, and we thought, wow, we've got such a affinity to these movies together. We used to go, and John will know this, we used to go to the Limey from Vimey. That's our connection. That's his code name. Although he still trades on eBay today, can you believe it? And we used to say to him, used to say, right, can you get us, what can you get us? And he would say, I've got a couple of movies for you. I'll put them both on a disc. I'll charge you a tenner. I says, right, because these movies you could not get from anywhere. And I had a look at my cupboard and I thought, have I got any of these left? And I have. So, and I've obviously got the updates here, because that's the thing about when you're collecting stuff, as everyone will know. You went through the VHS and the DVD and the Blu-ray and the 4K and all that, and you're constantly trying to upgrade these things, because in a way, when we saw most of these movies, they were in the most absolutely horrible conditions, and they've been copied that many times because you couldn't get an original because it cost far too much money if you could get it because it was so rare that you would get like an abysmal copy. So it's great to get these things coming out even on 4K to see these movies as they were intended. They would never, you never see like in that in the 80s, but they were intended to look a certain way, but the transfers just couldn't handle that. So this one here was Nightmares in a Damaged Brain with Absurd. These were two really hard videos to get. Now, when I've looked at it, unfortunately, it's starting to get a bit of mold in there, obviously due to the storage in the cupboard. That's a bit of a shame. I don't think I'll ever play this, but I'll never get rid of it because this is like something, right that goes right back to the 90s for me. There's the tag there. I should have took the tag off because to it, so I can't rub over it. But you'll know that obviously now you can upgrade these to that's the 4K as well, but I haven't got the 4K yet. And there's two amazing Blu-rays there, and this one as well. This The Killing of America and Mad Ron's Previews from Hell. That was an absolutely brilliant little sort of like best of. That's got more in it as well, unfortunately. But yeah, so that was these ones when he would say to you, I'd say, "What's that?" And you say, "Oh, you got to get that. It's such a good movie." And I don't know if you probably can get it from somewhere. But The Killing of America is obviously come out in the UK. I can't believe this has come out in the UK uncut, and that's actually got a longer cut than was on this movie. This movie is like a shorter cut, even though it's fully uncut. This one's like got Japanese stuff in it as well. It's meant to be really brutal. I mean, this movie is brutal beyond belief. But it just shows you how in horror, you always are updating, you always are upgrading. When I used to see these things on the TV, I couldn't wait to own them. You couldn't own them, so then you would wait, try and get them on VHS. Then you would upgrade the DVD. Then the 4Ks are coming on, and it's never ending actually. But I think at this point, it's such a good time to be in because I think that it's great to actually have went through this journey where I started off. I would have preferred to get more into video nasties just a little, probably a year before I did, but it is what it is. I can't go back in time. But this shows you that at this time, I'm glad I went through that. I'm glad I lived through the whole video nasty thing. That gave me a sort of appreciation where you can sort of say, hang on a minute, I've got this. This thing was something like a stuff of legends. You would talk about certain things, nightmares, a damaged brain, and there you are. You can literally just go to the shop, when it's in stock, and you can just say, right, I'll have one of them. It's just a mad sort of time to be in, but a really enjoyable time as well. So, of course, having a connection like the Limey for Vimey, me and John Hall just went crazy when we're going to go and get these things off him. We're going for all these things like Faces of Death, Traces of Death, Men Behind the Sun, all these ones that you heard of, but you couldn't see. But you would ask him, say, you got this? You say, yeah, I've got that. It's a good copy or it's a bit of a bad copy. We used to send away for them things. We used to watch them. And we used to sit and watch them. You see, with pizza and beans. I don't know if John remembers that. Every Saturday, we used to put these grotesque things on and just to watch them when we were eating. These days, I wouldn't want to do that. I've been there, done it, got the T-shirt, and it was good at the time. But looking back on it, I'm glad I did it. But the extreme horror, like Mondo stuff, is not really somewhere I really want to go to these days. So I'd say the next step for me, round about 1998 to 2012, was the advent of DVD. Now this was a revelation because the best thing about DVD was you could start to import these movies yourself and you would get them because don't forget it was still a bit dodgy to get these things in the UK. I think the Limey from Vimey would get some stuff for us, but you can get all these region one if you've got a multi-region player, which what got immediately, and you could go and get these fully uncut ones just on disc, and they were absolutely immaculate compared to the videos because don't forget up till now, I did see the uncut versions of these movies, but this was like seeing these for the first time. You would see them how they're meant to be, widescreen as well, because don't forget they weren't widescreen when you saw them on VHS. So you had all these benefits to go for. So that's where we seem to navigate towards. We'll go towards the American market for region ones. And the same when Blu-ray came in, roundabout for me, roundabout 2012. That's when I started to buy Blu-rays. And I only started to buy Blu-rays because they started to release the obscure horrors. Now, if they hadn't done obscure horrors, I still would have been on DVD. Now, the amazing thing about the whole obscure horror thing is it's really been embraced by 4K. So that's why I upgraded to 4K because I know that 4K was out for a couple of years and I was had no intention to go near it. But when I start to see movies like Zombie Flesh Eaters getting put out, I thought, right, this is the time for me to go to 4K. And yes, I bought some like sort of normal films on 4K, but the best thing about 4K, as everyone knows, is apart from a few slight exceptions, is region free. So again, you're like a kid in a candy shop because you can see all these great movies coming from America. So again, you're taking this great step in your horror collecting journey. And of course, with the advent of packaging and the special editions and the slipcovers, I think that I'm drawn to slipcovers especially because I was a huge fan of these comics back in the day, and they had amazing artwork, which was very memorable. So maybe this is my affinity for slipcovers has got a bit to do with this because I was always drawn towards art in these comics, and I used to sort of try and draw them myself, and it was one of those things that really stuck with us. So maybe my love for slipcovers has something to do with collecting this stuff way back in the day. So to recap from that time in 1973, sitting petrified in Biker Apollo, to now. So this collection reminds me, good or bad, of everything that's been before. You've got your Live and Let Die up there, you've got your Doctor Who's over there, you've got your Video Nasties over there, and I am always looking forward to see what the future brings. So, thanks for watching, you take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.